You know that number that lives in the back of your head? The one you do math on during boring meetings or right before you fall asleep? The number that would mean you never have to answer an email again. Most people think that number is $1 million. Some think it's 5 million. Some think it's so far away, it's not even worth calculating. Here's the thing. There's a number you can actually calculate. Not a guess, not a vibe. A real target based on your spending and your investments. And once you know it, you'll never look at your paycheck the same way. My name is Drek, and I spend an unreasonable amount of time thinking about the math behind financial freedom. What it actually takes, not what Instagram tells you it takes. If this video ends up changing how you think about your own number, do me a favor and hit subscribe. It genuinely helps more than you'd think. Okay, so here's what most people believe. They think never working again means having some astronomical, borderline impossible amount of money. 10 million, 20 million. Numbers so big, they don't even bother trying. And honestly, that belief is convenient. Because if the number feels impossible, you don't have to feel bad about not pursuing it. You get to say, well, that's not realistic for someone like me, and go back to not thinking about it. But here's what actually happens when you run the real math. The number isn't about being a billionaire. It's about one simple relationship. The relationship between what you spend every year and how much your investments can reasonably generate every year without you touching the principal. That's it. That's the entire equation. And once you understand it, the number stops feeling like a fantasy and starts feeling like a target you could actually hit within your lifetime, maybe even sooner than you'd expect. There's a piece of research that changed how financial planners talk about retirement forever. It's called the Trinity Study, done by 3 finance professors back in 1998. They looked at decades of market data going back to the 1920s and asked one question. How much can you withdraw from your investments every year without running out of money over a 30-year retirement? The answer that came out of that research is roughly 4% per year. Here's what that means in plain English. If you have your money invested in a diversified portfolio, a mix of stocks and bonds, you can withdraw around 4% of the total every single year. Adjust it slightly for inflation, and historically, that had a strong chance of lasting through a long retirement. The original study was about 30-year horizons, so it's best understood as a planning rule, not a guarantee forever. That's a powerful piece of information, because it means you don't need your money to last forever by accident. There's an actual formula behind it. So now flip that equation around. If 4% is what you can safely withdraw, then your never work again number is simply your annual spending multiplied by 25. Let that sink in for a second. Multiplied by 25. Not multiplied by 1,000. Not some impossible figure. 25 times your yearly expenses. Let's make it concrete. Say you spend $40,000 a year to live comfortably. Rent, food, insurance, the occasional trip. Multiply that by 25, and your number is $1 million. Say you're a bit more modest, spending $30,000 a year. Your number is $750,000. Say you live in a higher-cost city and spend $60,000 a year. Your number is $1,500,000. And if you're someone spending $80,000 a year on a genuinely comfortable lifestyle, your number is $2 million. Suddenly, never work again isn't some abstract fantasy. It's a specific dollar figure tied directly to your own lifestyle, sitting right there waiting to be calculated. Think of it like this. Imagine your investments are a fruit tree, and the 4% is the fruit that grows back every single year without you having to cut into the trunk. As long as you only eat the fruit and never touch the trunk, the tree keeps producing. Most people, when they think about having enough money, picture cutting down the tree and eating it all at once. That's not what this is. This is about growing a tree big enough that the fruit alone feeds you, without the tree ever getting smaller. And here's the beautiful part. The tree doesn't just stay the same size. Over time, if markets cooperate the way they historically have over long periods, your tree may grow even bigger than what you're taking out, which means your fruit, your safe withdrawal amount, can also increase over the years. Now here's something that'll probably surprise you. Most people assume this number changes wildly based on income. It doesn't, not really. What changes it is spending. Someone earning $200,000 a year but spending $180,000 of it needs almost as big a number as someone earning $60,000 and spending $55,000. Income determines how fast you get there. Spending determines the size of the mountain you're climbing. I know that sounds backwards, because we're taught to obsess over how much we earn. But hear me out. Your number is set. the moment you decide your lifestyle. Income just determines your speed toward it. Two people with wildly different salaries can have the exact same target, and the person earning less but spending less might actually get there first. Before you calculate this, money feels infinite and finite at the same time. Infinite in how much you could theoretically need, and finite in how little you actually have saved. You're in what I'd call survival math mode. Every purchase gets evaluated in isolation. Can I afford this coffee? Should I upgrade my phone? Every decision feels heavy because you have no anchor point, no destination to measure progress against. You save money because you're supposed to, not because you know what it's building toward. It's like walking somewhere without knowing the address. Technically moving, but with no sense of how far you have left to go, and no way to know if you're even walking in the right direction. This is exactly why so many people give up on saving entirely. When there's no visible finish line, discipline feels pointless. You end up thinking, what's the point of saving $200 this month when I need $1 million? And that thought alone is enough to make people stop trying, not because they can't do it, but because the goal feels disconnected from the action. Okay, so let's actually build this out with real numbers, because this is where it gets exciting. Let's say your number is $1 million. The person spending $40,000 a year. Let's say you're starting from zero and investing $1,500 a month into a diversified index fund portfolio, averaging a historically reasonable 8% annual return. Here's what the math looks like. In year 5, you'd have roughly $110,000. Feels slow, right? In year 10, you'd be at around $274,000. Still feels far away. But here's the part that will blow your mind. By year 20, you're at roughly $860,000. And by year 23 to 24, you cross the full million. Notice something? The first half of the journey, getting from zero to $500,000, takes about 16 to 17 years. But the second half, getting from $500,000 to the full million, only takes about 6 to 7 years. That's not a coincidence. That's compound interest, doing an increasing share of the work while you keep contributing the exact same amount, same effort, same monthly deposit. Your money starts pulling more weight than you do. Let's push this further, because it gets even more dramatic at higher net worths. Once you cross $500,000 invested, an 8% return generates $40,000 a year in growth alone, without you lifting a finger. Once you cross $1 million, that same 8% generates $80,000 a year. That's more than the annual salary many people work full-time jobs to earn, just from your money sitting there, compounding on its own. This is what people mean when they say, money makes money. It's not some secret club reserved for people who already had wealth handed to them. It's simple math. The bigger the base, the bigger the growth each year, even at the exact same percentage as when you started. And this is exactly why the last stretch to your number often feels faster than the first stretch, even though you're doing the same amount of work. Now here's where things shift beyond spreadsheets. Once you actually know your number and can see the timeline to it, your relationship with money fundamentally changes. Before, every unexpected expense, a car repair, a rent increase, felt like a disaster because you had no system, just fear. After you know your number and you're tracking real progress toward it, those same expenses become minor inconveniences. Annoying, sure, but not catastrophic, because you understand where you stand relative to your goal. You also stop making decisions out of fear. You start negotiating for that raise you deserve, because the worst-case scenario, them saying no, doesn't threaten your entire foundation anymore. You take calculated risks on opportunities because you can actually run the numbers instead of guessing in the dark. And here's something almost nobody talks about. Once your number feels achievable, you naturally start optimizing the big decisions instead of obsessing over the small ones. You stop agonizing over a $4 coffee and start focusing on the decisions that actually move the number. Housing costs, income growth, investment strategy, the stuff that swings your net worth by tens of thousands, not by a few dollars a week. There's actual psychological research behind this shift too. Studies on financial stress consistently show that uncertainty, not just the size of your bank account, but the lack of a clear target, is one of the biggest drivers of chronic financial anxiety. Having a defined number, even one that's years away, can reduce that anxiety because your brain finally has something concrete to plan around instead of an abstract fear. This is why people who track their FIRE number, financial independence, retire early, often report lower money-related stress than people with the exact same net worth who've never calculated one. Think about that for a second. Two people could have the exact same amount of money in the bank, same job, same income, same savings rate. But the one who's done this calculation feels calmer, more in control, more confident about the future, purely because they know the destination, not because they have more money. Now here's the warning, because I see this constantly. People finally hit a big milestone. Say they cross $200,000 invested, and instead of staying the course, they suddenly feel like they've made it and loosen up dramatically. They upgrade their car, they inflate their lifestyle, and without realizing it, they just move their own finish line further away. Remember, your number is your spending times 25. Every time your annual spending goes up by $10,000, your target goes up by $250,000. Lifestyle inflation isn't just spending more today. It's quietly making your entire mountain bigger, sometimes without you even noticing it happen. The people who actually reach this number aren't the ones who deprive themselves forever, living like monks and never enjoying their money. They're the ones who keep their spending relatively stable while their income and investments grow, widening the gap between the two instead of closing it back up every time they get a raise or a bonus. Let me give you two quick examples, so this really lands. Person A earns $70,000 a year and spends $65,000 of it. Their number is $1,625,000. At their current savings rate, that could take 30+ years, if it happens at all. Person B earns $55,000 a year, less than Person A, but spends only $35,000. Their number is $875,000. Investing the difference consistently, they could realistically reach that number in 15 to 18 years. Same effort in terms of discipline, completely different outcomes. Person B, earning less, actually reaches financial independence almost twice as fast, purely because their number is smaller and their gap between income and spending is wider. This is the part nobody tells you when they're chasing a bigger salary as the only solution. A bigger salary helps, sure, but controlling your number, your spending, often does more heavy lifting than people expect. So let's bring this back to you. Take your actual annual spending, not your income, your spending. Multiply it by 25. That's your number. If you don't know your exact spending, estimate conservatively. Most people underestimate by 15 to 20%. Round up if you're unsure. It's better to aim slightly high than to be caught short. That number isn't a fantasy anymore. It's a math problem. And math problems have solutions. Solutions you can actually start working toward today, this week, this month. Once you have it, here's what actually matters. Don't just stare at it. Build a simple monthly contribution plan around it. Even a modest, consistent amount invested in a diversified low-cost index fund, left alone for decades, does most of the heavy lifting through compound growth, not through timing the market or picking hot stocks. Track it once or twice a year. Not obsessively every single day. Checking it constantly won't make it grow faster. It'll just make you anxious about short-term market swings that don't actually matter over a 20 or 30-year timeline. And revisit your number periodically, because your spending will change. Maybe you'll have kids. Maybe you'll pay off a mortgage. Maybe you'll downsize. Your number isn't fixed forever, but the formula, spending times 25, stays the same as a planning shortcut. Remember that feeling at the start, doing math in your head during a boring meeting, wondering if you'll ever actually get there? That feeling doesn't have to stay abstract anymore. Your number isn't infinite. It's not some unreachable fantasy reserved for people born into money. It's your spending, times 25. That's it. That's the whole secret that gets dressed up as some complicated financial mystery. One path is staying in survival math forever. Reacting to every expense, guessing at a future you can't picture, hoping things somehow work out.